Okay, today's video, we're gonna try and make a knotted rope. And we're gonna create it so we can put this into the splines model panel. And then you can pull that up and use that along with your curves so you can create a flowing rope with knots. Okay, so let's get started. We'll start with jumping into the surface mode. I'll just start with a plain grid, make sure I'm in top view and that I'm set to orthographic, which I am. And this will be the style knot we'll try to make. And hopefully it's going to look something along this line right up here. Okay, so I'm going to move that off the screen. And the first thing we're going to do is find our curves tool. And where is the center of the screen? Okay, so let's go ahead and start creating a knot. I'm going to make the ball a little bit larger. Just leave our center here. Okay, so here we go. We'll just start off by dropping some points. And again, I'll put this here so we can see this together. We'll just drop some points. It doesn't have to be exact. Just kind of drop points where you think you're going to need to adjust them later. So we'll drop a couple of points here. We'll drop one here, down here, up here. And let's see, we're going to cross that over. Just go ahead and put one here. Again, one up here, one here, one here, and again, somewhere in the middle, and then here. Great. What's kind of cool about this is, like I said, you don't worry about where you're dropping. We just get the number of points that you're looking for. You can always adjust them anyway, so it's no big deal if you feel like you need to add more points. So we can grab any of these points with the middle mouse button and we can just kind of move it. And I'll move that for now just to get the ends out of the way and start working on placing these knots. So we're gonna try to get these a little closer in the middle. Oh, actually off to the side. Got to remember that there's a thickness to these things and we don't want them to crash into each other. So something like that. And this will be somewhere above the middle. Go to here, bring that into here. Okay, so it still looks a little crazy. There's nothing going on. Oops. Accidentally scaled that. All right, so now we're going to start going above and below. So we'll just highlight this point and move that above. Highlight this point and move that below. And now for the sides, this is kind of sitting above here. The center is going to drop down. Let's drop down below. It's going to drop lower. Move this, oops, move this off to the side here. This will come up. Oh yeah, no, that's going to go below. It's going to above, it'll go below. It's going to go. A little closer, closer. I feel like I need another point here, so I'm just going to highlight, and you can see that the ball kind of fits inside that curve. I'll just click right there, and now I have a new point. So now I've got something a little bit more like this. That's going to come up above this point. This is going to kind of drop down here. This is definitely going to drop below. I'm going to add a point here. It's going to go a little higher. A point here, drop lower. Okay. Starting to get something here. All right, now let's tighten this rope. So we'll start bringing that in, bringing that in. I should have a point. Yeah, there we go. Put that underneath here. Just add a little bit. Go. Bring these in. And start bringing the tops and bottoms closer. Okay. We're getting there. Okay, now let's just, okay, to get a better visualization of what's happening, you'll already see that, let's do this. There's already a preset rope right here, and we can use this to kind of visualize what's happening with this knot. So we'll just go ahead and click on that. And now we've got something like this. And what's going to be really cool about this is when we start moving these points, it's going to adjust the actual strands and position them. So watch this. I'm going to bring this in a little bit. Go. Add in. I mean, it's so cool. There we go. And let's tighten this up a little bit. We'll bring that in a little. I think just be careful not to like crash them into each other. If you feel like you need to add a point, and then just go ahead and add a point. Okay. We can do something like this. So what I want to do now is I just want to make sure that these knots are going to be in a good point to snap. So right in the center here. Maybe I'll raise this one a little bit. Something like that. And we'll take a look from, let me raise this. Yeah. Okay, and then we'll take a look from the top. All right, cool. So now we'll go ahead and add this to this layer here. So just hit apply. And I'm going to create a new layer. So here's one knot. And now this next layer, what I'm going to do is create a section of this rope. Now I'm just going to go ahead and use the same rope material from 3DCoat, and I'm just going to clear the points and create a new curve. So now I'll just go ahead and click here and make a point, make a length like maybe that long. I'll add 2 points. So here, here. And I'll hit enter or apply. They do the same thing, and I'm going to add them to this highlighted layer here. Okay, and then lastly, I'll just go ahead and duplicate this first knot that we have by clicking this duplicate layer. And I'm just going to drag that down to the very bottom. And now we can move that over to the edge here. Great. Let's take a look at the top, make sure we have alignment. Okay, looks okay. Cool, now that we have these 3 pieces, we can actually make a rope out of it. But I think what I'm going to do first is select all these layers and just kind of move it so it's more centered. Be something like that. Yeah, I think that would be good. And now that we have everything all centered and ready to go, we need to give them a naming structure so we can have a beginning, a middle, and an end when we're creating a spline for these ropes or for these knots. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and name the bottom layer top. For some reason, when I name it the other way and I start painting, I feel like it inverts the order. So I'm just going to start off with calling this one top. I know it makes no sense, but it works. Middle underscore knot, and then bottom underscore knot. And now that I have all these selected, I've already made a few. I'm going to actually delete this one right here and add this by just dragging it down to the plus. And now you're presented with this window here. This is the spacing. So you can see that if I set it to 1, it's a 1-to-1. And then now if I just start moving that X, you can see that it starts moving my rope. Now it's really deceiving because what's happening is we are seeing the original ropes. I think I'm going to see if I can. I guess I can't hide the original, but what I end up doing is I end up moving this to where the knots just seem to collide with each other. So in this case, I'm just going to make this 128 and hit OK. You're going to do trial and error for sure. It took me a while to get used to it because what you see is not what you get in the end. I'll just go ahead and leave the poly count, say OK. All right, great. So let's try it out. So let's zoom out. Let's hit curves. I'll clear all existing curves right now. And let's make the ball or the points a little larger for the rope. And let's see what happens as I start stroking. Okay, so right now we're pulling the last thing that I had selected, which was this rope. But I'm going to switch that to the new knot that we just made. There we go. So you can start creating a cool rope with 2 knots at the very end. If you find that the threading doesn't look quite right, so you can see that it gets really bunched up right along here, and that is because we didn't get the spacing right. So let's do it again. Let's go ahead and delete this one. We'll grab these layers again, drag that in, and make an adjustment. So we're going to have to go a little further apart for spacing. Let's try 250, say OK. Again, it's just trial and error. I have to do this a few times to get it right. Say OK. And now we'll select that and start dropping the curve. There we go. That feels better. And again, it's cool because I'm dropping down this curve and now I can readjust, and it basically readjusts all that so I don't get pinching, so I can move it closer or over, and it just adjusts the knots or the twists. All right, so that's one. We'll just go ahead and create a new layer for fun right here and apply that. So there's our rope. But now let's say you wanted to create a rope and then start dropping knots along this rope. So what you can do now is you've already created the knot. So just go ahead and take that knot. And I think you want to give it a different naming structure than this. I don't think you want to prefix it with top, middle, or bottom, because I think that means something when you're dropping it into the spline menu. So you might just want to duplicate one of these knots. We'll just go ahead and take this bottom one, since they're the same, and duplicate. And then give it its own name, like single knot, for example. And then we can take that and drop it into here. And now there's this, and depends on how far you want your knots spaced apart. We'll just go ahead and leave it at 256 and see what comes from it. Say OK. Perfect. So now go back to the curves tool And if we hit our knot, you'll see that it starts repeating that knot. Oops, shoot. I scaled the knots. Okay, so you see it starts repeating that knot across. So we can take the scale here and we can make them bigger. But I think what's happening now is the knots are really close together. So we need to give them more spacing than that 256. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and clear all that. I'm going to delete this knot again. I wish there was a better way I can just edit it. Maybe there is and I'm not aware of it. So I'm going to take this knot again and drag that. And instead of 256, maybe I'm going to do something like 1024, just the heck of it. And say okay. And okay. Now I have a new knot. And so we can create a curve and just kind of play with it and just see if the spacing is gonna work for us or not. Go ahead and choose our knot. So we'll get a knot basically spread apart that far. That's okay. Let's go ahead and just go with that. See what happens. So let's clear it. Let's make our sphere a little larger. Something like that, maybe. Let's see if that may be a little bit too big. All right, so let's clear. Again, one more time, we'll make our sphere a little closer to the size of this knot here. Okay, something like that. Cool. So now what we can do is we'll create a rope like this. All right, something like that. And now let's put knots along that rope. So let's apply it. Again, I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to apply this to that layer. There we go. And then I'll create a new layer. And then this time, I'm going to select the knots we just created. And of course, the knots are going to be the size of the diameter of this rope. So now what we can do is just increase the scale. Something like that. Maybe make it a little larger. There we go. We got something like that. And I'm going to apply it to this layer. And now we've got a rope with some knots. It's not perfect, but you can get an idea of like how this can work. There's a lot of cool examples that they already have that you might want to look through. But anyway, this was an idea because I know making ropes can be a real pain in the butt sometimes. So, all right, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.